Frank Azurri, he's never worried, he's...
My favorite sport? In the US, it's called soccer. In Italia, è calcio. In most of the world, it's called football. It's the most popular sport in the world, and when you watch a match, you can feel its history. Some clubs, they're more than just sports teams. They're pillars of the community, like FC St. Pauli, Bohemians in Dublin, Livorno in Italia. Getting to watch a match is an amazing experience. For a few hours, you just get to take a break and watch people play this wonderful game. So, while it's the most fun when your team wins, for me, just getting to watch a match, I've already won. My favorite team is the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and they're playing near me against Orange County. Drew and I are going to the match.
So Frank, what time does the game start?
4 o'clock.
Wait, 4 o'clock? It's nearly 4.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking they should be here any minute. This is weird.
Let me check, man. Something's not adding up. Wait, Frank, it says here it's a home game for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
Yeah, that means it's on TV. You can watch it at home.
Frank, that means the game is in Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense. I hope someone can use our seats.
So, wait, you grew up in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
And the Pittsburgh Riverhounds are the only Pittsburgh team you follow?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're the most popular one.
Frank, what about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Who?
Football, Frank, the Pittsburgh Steelers!
I've never heard of that, man. I don't know who has.
Frank, you really are one of a kind, buddy.
Thanks, Drew. You're one of a kind, too, because nobody else is you. I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I should write that down.
Top 10% gets it all. Gets it all. Gets it all.
Ciao, ciao, ciao. Sei la voglia, la partigiana. Tu mi devi seppellire e seppellire la subordinata. Oh, bella, ciao, bella, ciao, bella, ciao, ciao, ciao.
All right, that was episode 4. Episode 4 of Frank. You know, I don't know, man. I gotta say, Drew, I think this is my favorite episode so far. I don't know if you're supposed to say that, but I got, there's just something about this episode that I just really, really thought it was special. And I think if you're just getting into Frank Azurri and this is the first one you watched, this was a good first one to watch because I feel like this is really just a prime example of what the show is all about, I think.
Yeah. And you got to go a little deep into some of your Italian heritage too, right? And soccer, which are two things that Ron really loves. He doesn't have to act.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Drew, in real life, Drew was actually mixing up the Riverhounds and the Steelers. So that shows you how into sports you are.
I'm a bad sportser, like I'm not so good at it or following it. There's so many games, Ron, right? Like...
Dude, you're not wrong. I actually think that kind of made it. Well, I drew the character. It's not like he's necessarily a sports aficionado.
Right.
He just knew
Pittsburgh
Steelers.
Yeah,
he's like Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the big thing, right? And Frank's like, no, it's it's the minor league soccer team. That's the one everyone knows.
Right.
Which is, kind of, that was Frank's. But there's a ton of metaphors in this one. There's a ton of Easter eggs, more than we've ever done before, that points to. So first of all the teams that Frank mentioned around the world, a lot of Americans may or may not know this. It's random that Frank knows this, and these are the teams he celebrates, but he named all the most left-wing clubs pretty much in the world. Those are all the teams that he named, like FC St. Pauli, Bohemians, Livorno. He named, not all of them, but those were all very, very prominent left-wing clubs
that he named as examples of what he likes. And then, of course, his favorite team is the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, which is a minor league team. They're the league below MLS, and they do have a very dedicated fan base. Like they're definitely, but they have, they kind of have a left tinge about them as well. Like they did like you'll see some anti-fascist banners. You'll see a lot of rainbow flags. They did a gay wedding before one of the games not too long ago. So there's definitely that going on in their fan base as well. So yeah.
And not that sports needs any help like gaining audience, but that was always kind of my in with sports too. So I learned all this when Ron like was telling me about this as we were shooting. And I like my in with sports has always kind of been like, oh, like they did something that like supported like left wing politics. Like, all right, like I'm going to start paying attention. Remember at the World Cup, like they were like some people were wearing like rainbow bands, right, in protest. Now I'm being like, that's a game I want to watch. Or now I know a football player because Colin Kaepernick was kneeling.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, so it's a cool in for I guess leftists like that are like me that don't know about sports. Like you can have a doorway in like with these teams that are like intentional in their politics, right? Which is cool.
It is cool, and it's very interesting, and it's something that I feel like, especially in the US, is just sort of
separate.
Separate, and that's slowly, I mean, like now that is sort of coming over here. Like Portland's MLS team has a big Antifa following. I mentioned some of the stuff with the Riverhounds, so it's kind of changing a little bit here. But that's not really a thing in the US. And I still remember, I never knew that was the case internationally. Like it's just one of those things, like you why would you know that unless you were exposed to it or learned about it? And what happened to me was many, many years ago, I was over in Italy and I was wearing an AC Milan jersey. Now at the time, AC Milan's kind of a weird example because some apparently now they're more of a center left team, but at the time they were a right wing team because Berlusconi owned them. To my knowledge, I don't believe Berlusconi still owns them, but he did at the time when I had this jersey on. I didn't even know that, I mean, I knew who Berlusconi was, but I didn't know he owned the team. I didn't know. I just liked AC Milan because they were basically at the time the only Italian team I ever got to watch. So I just liked them for that reason, like just by default. They were the only team I would occasionally get to watch.
Right.
So I liked AC Milan and I had an AC Milan jersey, and my cousins in Florence were kind of looking at me weird in my AC Milan jersey. And then they asked me, because he was the president at the time, they said, "Oh, do you like Bush?" And I said, "No, but why are you asking me that?" And then, my one cousin said, well, that's a right-wing team. And I was like, what does that mean? And he explained the whole thing to me. And I didn't know. I said, wow, that's interesting. I just wear this because it's the only team I get to watch.
Yeah.
It's like, and he goes, oh, okay, well that makes sense. And then he asked me, he goes, well, are the Pittsburgh Steelers a Republican team or a Democrat team? And I said, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was how I learned about all that. And there's a couple books about it, like kind of football and anti-fascist history and stuff like that. And also, there are right-wing teams and there are some even far right-wing teams out there. I mean, there are some straight up, Nazi fans and stuff like that. I know that Croatia had some issues with that recently where a bunch of like Nazi football hooligans or whatever, like a bunch of them showed up in Milan and they got chased out of town. Wow. The Nazis got chased out of town in Milan. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place. And honestly, I only know so much. I mean, there's tons, there's people I know over there who could speak to this way better than you or I can. But I thought it was interesting. We're doing a Frank from that perspective. There's still kind of an American perspective, even though he has this, just observation about soccer and why it is his favorite sport.
Right. And it's interesting to me as you're talking about all of that, though, too, like the separation that we have here, where it's like this, sports feels like it's just inherently right-ish to me. It always kind of has, right? And that's just because I'm a little ignorant of it and not good at it. So I want to throw shade at it a little. But there's always that, even in the recent Super Bowl. I remember just talking to people casually. It's like, oh, don't mix like politics in with this is my escape, this is my like fun time. And it's such a weird distinction to make. Like, no, we don't want the distraction from like what's going on in politics, what's going on with like class in our society. We don't want our distraction to comment on that,
Well, the sad thing too is like they do make deliberate political decisions. I mean, the NFL made a deal with the military. I want to say it was like 2009-ish, but the NFL basically made a deal with the military that they would basically be a war commercial.
Yeah.
And that's when the players started, showing up for the national anthem and stuff like that. And so that's all like there's definitely a lot of undertones, and it is by nature right wing because it's very, very pro-war.
Yeah.
They never, they'll always honor, troops and veterans and stuff like that. Which okay, that's fine if you want to honor somebody who came back or whatever, but they never honor teachers. They never honor, why don't they honor a librarian? Why don't they honor a teacher? Why don't they honor, even a firefighter or something, but it's like, nope, cops, military.
Right.
Because they want young people who are watching that to then want to go join the military.
Right. Recruitment.
Because that's why it was all about recruitment. Like recruitment was down. So they made a deal with the NFL. And I don't know if that's related to the NFL losing their nonprofit status that they should have never had in the first place. But, the NFL was a nonprofit until kind of recent.
Wow.
Which just shows you how, that can really be.
I always knew people
used as a scam.
Right. I always knew people treated sports religiously, but I didn't realize it went that far. They were actually nonprofit, like 501c3.
The NFL was a nonprofit for a while, and it made major news because a lot of people just didn't know that, and it kind of hit the news, and then eventually they weren't able to be a nonprofit anymore, probably because it was just so on the nose that people were like, "Come on, this is ridiculous." And I mean, it just shows like there's loopholes that if you got enough power and the right attorneys, you can really take advantage of. I'm certainly not implying all nonprofits are scams. That's certainly not the case, but some are, and the NFL was definitely one of them. Them having nonprofit status, because clearly they're not a nonprofit. But I mean, look, all the sports leagues are pretty freaking shady. It's just some I think are even worse than others, but there's an element of shadiness in pretty much all of them.
Right. And Frank's unintentionally, again, aligned with like the more left, the more progressive, even if he doesn't quite realize all the ins and outs of why, right? Because he doesn't know anything about, we're learning about Frank not knowing anything about like the biggest team in Pittsburgh, right?
Which is just so fun. I mean, and that's another thing. It's like you kind of wonder, because I feel like there's a certain ageless element about Frank. Like it's like he could be like no one, like how old would you think he is? Like I have no idea how old that guy is or isn't. Like he just gives the vibe of just sort of this ageless entity. And even the way he always has the hat on. He always has, it's like a very just ambiguous, like an 80-year-old or a 20-year-old could be dressed like that at any given moment.
Right.
And that's just his character. So you kind of wonder, like, okay, he thinks that the Pittsburgh Riverhounds are the most popular team in Pittsburgh, and they're the one that everyone knows. And, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds have been around since 1999. So you're kind of like, well, how old is he? When was he in Pittsburgh? Like when, I mean, he grew up there, but when did he grow up? Has he always known the Riverhounds, or does he remember when they first came to town? How was he not into? I mean, there's still a lot of stones to overturn with him. That's quite interesting, and I don't know if we'll answer all those questions. I kind of like the ambiguous age of him. I think I want it. I think I want it to stay that way.
Yeah.
Where you're like, well, how does that add up? And it's like, well, somehow it does.
Right. And it's across multiple continents too, right? It's like we know he's got little connections. And it is fun just kind of adding little pieces to the puzzle that make it a little more mysterious as you add them.
Yeah, I mean, how was he so fluent in Meloncello that he decided to make it? What family does he have in Italy versus in the US? How did he wind up in Pedro? We know he's not from there.
Right.
It's like there's all these, it'd be what, like, he's pro union, but he's not a dock worker. He makes meloncello,
right?
Not limoncello. He does not make limoncello.
Right. They're so close.
Yeah,
I always trip him up too. He's got a rapport with the kids, and he's got a rapport presumably with like the people in town that would bust him for that, because he's not getting in trouble.
He doesn't get in trouble yet. He hasn't gotten in trouble yet.
Right, so far.
Yeah, but yeah, this and there's a lot of. So first of all, I mean, it's not fun if you like unpack every Easter egg, but it's like there are little subtle things here. One of the ones that I really always love to celebrate is the anti-fascist vibe with pasta in general, which a lot of people don't know about. But pasta, it's always just been a very, very popular food in Italy. But there's also an anti-fascist vibe towards pasta, because when Mussolini was in power, he said that pasta made you weak. Pasta was a weak food to eat, and you need to be eating meat and vegetables, and you're weak if you eat. So in a way, like there's this anti-fascist vibe towards pasta, almost as like an FU to all that. Now, I think it's important that we say trying to watch your carbs does not make you a fascist. That's a perfectly reasonable, health conscious thing to do. But, obviously Mussolini was a fascist and an extremist, so but it's not, if you're like, oh, I have tried to have a high protein diet for health reasons, does that make me a fascist? Of course not. But but if you like Mussolini, it does make you a fascist. And there is like a symbolic nature about pasta, having an anti-fascist element.
Right. And it's just so weird because, number one, the fascists or whatever, it looks like kind of a bundle of pasta, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you go against like one of your nation's like number one food staples? I don't understand how he thought that was a good idea. Just from like a follower's standpoint, you don't see Hitler going out against Schnitzel.
Not that we know of. Well, there was that rumor he was vegan, but I think
you're
that
right.
was just that. I think that was hearsay, though. I don't think he was.
But for some reason, he didn't want to impose that on everybody. He was like, keep eating your sausages, Just don't be gay or Jewish or, an artist. He wanted to impose all of that on society.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it didn't end well for Mussolini. So I mean, eventually that all caught up to him, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, apparently like there's that bit of history there. And so we show pasta in the episode, it's like there's a little bit of subtlety there, although it's also like Frank is preparing to go to a game. There's all this kind of food, he's having toast. He's getting ready to go to the game. And also, full disclaimer, I did go to check the Riverhounds schedule, and I did see when they were playing Orange County, and I clicked it thinking I was about to get tickets, and I did notice, oh wait, the game's in Pittsburgh. And that's what gave me the idea to write the episode. So there's a bit of like, well, I almost did that, sort of, not quite. But, obviously, Frank, home. That means you can watch it at home.
And that's how we nervously were creeping around at like a girls' softball game, just trying to shoot. Just two men trying to shoot their little like project, but we felt a little weird because we're surrounded by like families and like girls playing softball, right?
Yeah, there is a designated field near us, and it was the closest field to us as we were trying to make this. And it is actually a girls' softball field, which is very particular. And I thought it was maybe just named that because like the team funded it or something like that. But sure enough, there was a game going on. So we show up to film this thing, and there's a girls' softball game going on. So we didn't want to shoot a ton of B-roll right there because it might look kind of weird, two dudes like with the phone and we had our film set up too. We have a stand and we have a mic and stuff, so we kind of went far off the beaten path and filmed the scene in these stand looking things. Oh, and we forgot the big phone stand. That was the other fun part.
Yeah.
We forgot the big phone stand. So what we had to do is we had to move this picnic table that was relatively heavy, but between the two of us, we did it. We had to move the picnic table and then put the small stand up, and that was how we shot that. So it ended up working out. And unfortunately, no one messed with us. We moved we put everything back the way we found it after we left. But that was that was the most demanding crew situation that Frank has warranted thus far.
Right. But we used what we could find around us. You know, we didn't get in the car again or you know, we didn't try to waste any unnecessary energy. We just lifted this really heavy table.
Yeah. We made it happen.
And now we're going over there a couple times a week just moving tables. I mean,
we just move tables. It's our exercise now.
Yeah.
We move tables around and we time ourselves.
And, you know, we look for any shoots that might need stands. You know, we're bringing tables.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, hit us up if you're at a shoot, you forget something. We'll bring you a table.
We can't bring you a stand, but we got a table for you.
Oh, yeah.
We'll move a table. So, yeah, I really hope you guys like this episode. This was... I like this one the best so far. And then of course we have a little bit of a snippet at the end of the Livorno fans singing Bellich Chow, which is considered the oldest anti-fascist hymn in the world. It is an Italian song. It is a very important song. And more recently, Giorgia Meloni, the prime minister of Italy, who is a far-right prime minister, she had her speech basically shut down by protesters singing that. You can find that clip online where it's like she's trying to speak and a bunch of, you know, protesters are just singing Bellich Chow so loud she just had to give up on it. You love to see it.
Yes, that's awesome. Like if somebody started singing Rage at like the what is it, the president's speech the other day?
Yeah, the State of the Union. If someone just started singing anything instead of just like cheering throughout the war rally.
Right.
Did you watch that, by the way?
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw pieces.
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I started at the beginning, and it was like, I don't even think he got to anything domestic by the time I shut it off.
Yeah.
Like it was all just like, we're going to keep doing all these wars and everyone's cheering. And that was it. That was the entire thing. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Right.
This is amazing that anyone is like even taking this remotely serious. And then he was talking about all the border bills.
Mm-hmm.
This was amazing to me. He was talking about all the border bills that were like super far right. And Republicans were booing him just because it's Joe Biden. So they're going to boo him.
Yeah.
And then he kind of called them out and was like, well, this border bill gives you guys basically almost everything you want. And then you saw people online celebrating that as some kind of win.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, Joe Biden dunked on the Republicans. And it's like, if you see politics through the lens of Wall Street sponsored team R versus Wall Street sponsored team D, and I root for team D or whatever, that's a very surface oriented analysis and very leaves much to be desired. Because another way of looking at that, which is how I look at it, is here's a guy who is just giving the right everything that they want, because let's be honest, he's pretty right wing himself, and is just acknowledging that. But they're still that they want it to be even more brutal.
Yeah.
So they're still booing him.
Yeah.
That's not a win. That's not a win. That's just saying like your choices are like right or even further right.
Right.
And he's just pointing out like, no, we gave you this really right-wing border bill.
Right.
You're still booing me? Oh, well, I
Right.
guess we'll make it even more further right next
Right.
time.
I'm reminded of Crosstalk here. There's a podcast out, 1000 by Ron Placone. Conversation that you and Russ Rankin.
Yeah, from Good Riddance.
Yeah, you guys
Singer
were
of Good
talking
Riddance.
right, talking around Green Party, and he said he talked about the theater. Like as we keep voting for the worst of two evils, it continually gets eviler, and we just participate in this theater for what? And you're talking about like the Biden border bill, and it's like just because of theater, people are booing Biden because it's part of the act that we're supposed to play, and now we just get like incredibly worse policy, and not even because a lot of people necessarily even want it worse. It's just that's the role that they're supposed to play. That, you know what I mean? It's like it's kind of shocking. Like, why you guys also talked about like punk like organizing all these people, but then sometimes just organizing for like people to drink and get drunk. And it's like, well, yeah, we like the theater and we like playing this game, but why can't we organize it around like, I don't know, just like labor politics, like politics that'll actually help? Because it seems like it seems like the content of it doesn't even matter so much as like playing the game, you know, for so much of the audience, at least, right?
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. So, yeah. Well, thank you for plugging the podcast.
Yeah, you should listen to it if you haven't heard it, Ron.
1000 with Ron Placone, wherever you get your podcast. And Drew, where can people find all of your stuff?
You can go onto Twitter. It is Twitter, and you can search at Andrew Saxena, and you'll find all my stuff, my Baywatching podcast, and my music and my films.
Yeah, Drew's got a lot of really cool music out, and his podcast, the Baywatching podcast, is great. And yeah, so this was episode 4. We are halfway through the first season already, folks. So we're gonna keep it coming. We already got the rest of the season planned out as far as what we're gonna do, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. Make sure you like these videos, share them. Make sure you're subscribed to Status Coup. And yeah, we'll see you next time.